to start the meeting. I never do this, but I'm going to start up here so that we can move it along and everybody can hear. So can you hear me okay? All right, great. All right, so good morning. I am Rebecca Tepper, the chair of the MWRA board, and I call this July 10, 2026 MWRA Board of Directors meeting to order. This meeting is being held at the Quabbin Visitors Center in Belchertown and via remote participation. I have a roll call vote to announce the board members who are attending today.
Secretary Tupper?
Yes.
Chief Flanagan?
Flanagan here.
Mr. Fode? Mr. Fode? Mr. Papa Sturgeon?
Papa Sturgeon here.
Mr. Pena?
Here.
Mr. Sweat? Mr. Taverna?
Here.
Mr. Vitale? Mr. Vitale is on. Muted. Mr. Patrick Welch?
Here.
And Ms. Long? Here. Thank you.
And Mr. Fode was
Fode's
second.
present.
Well, thank you, Mr. Fode. And Ms.
Thank you.
Mrs. Papa Sturgeon, Flanagan, Fode, Vitale, are muted.
All right, just so that everybody knows, as you can tell, this meeting is being recorded, and the agenda and materials are also on the MWRA website. So I'm just going to start by welcoming everybody here today. This is probably the biggest crowd that we've ever had for a board meeting. So thank you so much for coming out and spending the time with us this morning. Really appreciate it. And you know, I'm happy to be back here in the Quabbin. I was here earlier in my tenure with Senator Comerford, and I don't remember who else was there. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we went on a boat ride on the Quabbin. And it's, as you all know, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful day, and you know, I heard a lot from people here. I went to the Swift River Valley Museum, which was, for a small museum, a really wonderful museum and very educational, and had a really good visit here. So that visit and this visit is a reminder both of the beauty and the place of history that plays here. So I am very cognizant of the history of this area. And as you know, the Quabbin Reservoir plays a very important resource for drinking water to millions of people. But we also know that its creation came with significant sacrifices. Well aware that families lost their homes, that farms and businesses and entire communities and many residents were forced to leave the places that they call home. So that history, I know, continues to shape these communities, and it's important that I wanted to say that outright first thing this morning to acknowledge it, because I do know that shapes a lot of what we think about when we think about this area. But since then, the 12 watershed communities have been dedicated stewards to that area ever since, and deeply grateful for all who have done to maintain the Quabbin in the state that it is in. But at the same time, we also recognize that there are challenges. You know, you help to protect the state's most important natural resources while navigating your own infrastructure constraints, including, as we saw last week, limitations on water supply and development, and being able to adapt to climate change. So those are big challenges, and I assume that that's why many of you are here today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I know the whole board is looking forward to hearing from you and hearing more about those challenges. You know, that's why when I started this board, you know, we really wanted to think about what it would look like. I'm sorry, I might not talk loud enough. Wanted to think about what our options were. So we did have a system expansion evaluation done, and I know not everybody was happy with that report. I looked it over again yesterday before I came, just so that I could refresh my recollection. And I do think there's a lot of good information in there for us, but I do recognize it's a start, right? It's not an end. You know, one thing that we definitely wanted to do sort of also as a first step is in the Governor's Mass Ready Act, there was expansion of the communities and the annual payments for the watershed communities in fiscal year 2026 and 2027. And the reason why we picked those years, those 2 years, was because the governor also issued an executive order on pilot. And we now have a pilot commission that's looking at, for the whole state, how should pilot payments work? So the idea is, hopefully that commission will come up with recommendations, and we'll have different ideas, and we'll do the pilot differently, and that it will impact what happens here as well. So, but there will be additional payments in 2026, 2027, when that bill passes, which I am confident that it will. So the governor, as you know, just an update on that pilot commission, is holding listening sessions this month. And I think there's a list of the listening sessions somewhere. I will find out where it is.
Greenfield on July 16th,
Greenfield on July 16th.
at the Franklin Regional Council of Governments.
Thank you. So I encourage people to attend that as well. I know attending meetings in the middle of a day is not ideal, but this is an important commission, and I do think it's going to be making really important decisions for this area, and want to make sure that voices are heard.
Sorry, Secretary, that one's in the evening.
It's in the evening. That's helpful.
Yeah.
For some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the only other thing I wanted to say is your local leadership, your senators and reps are dogged in their support for your communities. They are steadfast and really committed to bringing to this community what you all deserve. And I hear from them a lot, and that helps. When your legislators are in people's ear, that helps. I know these senators and reps. And so I just wanted to thank them for being here today. We're going to hear from each of them. So I'm glad to be looking forward to hearing that. So I just wanted to say thank you again for coming, and looking forward to the conversations that we're going to have. I also wanted to give a quick update on the drought. So the drought continues to be not great. So I do this periodically in the beginning of a MWRA board meeting, because as you can imagine, it's important to the board to understand where we are in the drought situation. So the Northeast region right now remains at a level 3 critical drought. The Western region has moved to a level 2 significant drought from level 1 mild drought. The rest of the state is also at a level 2 significant drought. The MWRA service areas fall into multiple drought regions. We have seen impacts to our streams and other water bodies, decreasing groundwater levels, and impacts to fish migration and other natural habitats. And we know, based on our experience in the fall of 2024, that the drought can also lead to a higher fire risk. So it is critical that we continue to prepare ourselves and take necessary actions to protect our communities. Got good rain this weekend, this past week, really, that was well received, but it is helping temporarily increase steam flows and refilling of water bodies, but we needed to get into the ground, so we need lots of rain over a period of time to help us with the drought. So with that, I think we can move on to our next agenda item, which is for the executive director to talk.
Okay, I think I'll follow your lead and stand up front so that
Good idea.
you shout forward and not very badly.
Good idea.
I only have a couple of brief remarks for most of the board members and for some of the folks who are watching us remotely. I'll try. So on behalf of the MWRA staff, we have a number of folks here, mostly in the front row. We're happy to be out here at Quabbin. Any day at Quabbin is a wonderful day, but particularly when it's as beautiful as this. A couple of additional items on the drought and MWRA actions. The Secretary and I have a little dance each meeting as we talk about statewide and then local. Quabbin's at about 82%. If you look outside, we are about 8 foot below the lower spillway. That's not an unusual level, but it's certainly something we pay close attention to. Our annual water quality report that went out to all 900,000 households in the metropolitan area earlier in June. They included a message right on the front cover with a beautiful picture of the reservoir and the slogan, if you will, every drop counts, including information on conservation. We've been mailing additional brand new indoor and outdoor conservation brochures to communities. If you're a community rep and you're interested, want more, we can get those to you. We are paying close attention. We're not in a situation where we need mandatory restrictions at this point, but we are encouraging people to use the water wisely. On a transparency note, I want to offer a congratulations on behalf of some of the staff to the other staff. The Budget Department received the Government Finance Officers Association GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for our financial reports. I think we got on a pretty good run with that, but we do believe in making sure that folks can understand the details of what's behind it. For folks who are remote, I don't think many of our Quabbin neighbors are as interested, but the comment period for the CSO program is open. We are out doing outreach on that, and we are encouraging if folks want staff to come and visit your community or any group that we would be happy to chat with that. And with that, Madam Secretary, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so we received a lot of correspondence from local officials and from communities in the region. And I just want to recognize that we have those. I've read through all of them, the letters, the resolutions, proclamations, and other correspondence. The whole board has this correspondence, so thanks for your outreach. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to invite our legislative colleagues to talk one at a time. So we're going to start with Rex Saunders.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Belchertown. My name is Aaron Saunders. I have the honor of serving as a state representative for the 7th Camden District, which includes this community here, as well as the town of Ludlow, Pelham, Shutesbury, Wendell, New Salem, and Peterson, all of which are involved with the MWRA in one way, shape, or form. I appreciate, Madam Secretary, you and the board being here today. This is an important opportunity to hear directly from those who not only have been affected historically by the Quabbin, but who are affected today and will be in perpetuity. There are various types of extraction operations. Some extract rare earth minerals, some extract oil and natural gas. The MWRA extracts water. And we need to be clear about what the MWRA's role is in Western Mass. It is an extraction operation. And that's neither good nor bad, perhaps. We need rare earth minerals. Perhaps we need natural gas and oil. We do for certain things. We need water. And today I want to focus on two aspects of the MWRA's extraction operation. First is water access. Here in Belchertown, we're under a water ban. Folks here can only use water for essential purposes. While 180 million gallons per day are extracted from this community. Any of the MWRA communities under a water ban? Yeah. It's not great. I imagine if there was 180 million gallons of water a day available in those communities, they'd feel that it might be fair. And not MWRA Advisory Board fair, it's a different standard we'll address at a different time. But it would be fair to share in that resource. The drought here is so bad that they're gonna have to cancel fall sports for the Belchertown schools because we don't have water to irrigate the fields. You move up 202, you can go to New Salem. Where if you visit the police station in New Salem, I hope you don't have to use the facilities, because you gotta go to a different building. And I wonder if there are any MWRA communities in which their police chief needs to leave the police station to use the bathroom. It's quite the luxury to be able to use a bathroom in a police station. It's one that's not shared out here. These are fundamental questions of fairness and access. Madam Secretary, you mentioned the report that was issued. We didn't venture a guess at what it would cost to upgrade the water treatment plant that serves the Chicopee Valley Aqua. We got a $500 million proposal for new groundwater sources. Nothing in that report suggested sharing a drop of the Quabbin water. Not a single drop. While 180 million gallons a day is extracted from our communities. And what do they get in return? The Quabbin communities receive 0.3% of the MWRA budget in support. 0.3%. It's an obscene number. I appreciate the governor's effort and Madam Secretary, your effort for the additional 50,000 filed in Mass Ready. It doesn't even bring it up to 0.4%. This isn't handouts, it's not charity. It's recognition for the value of the resource you extract that has facilitated billions upon billions of dollars in economic development for our friends and neighbors in the eastern part of the state. It's facilitated thousands upon thousands of desperately needed housing units. While we can't redevelop the Belchertown State School because we don't have enough water. While the Chicopee Valley Aqueduct runs under our streets, we don't get a drop. We get a little less than $3 million a year for all communities combined. And I've heard it said before that the MWRA is the largest taxpayer in some of these communities, which is technically accurate. It's not an offense, it's an admission. It's an admission of how criminally small the consideration for our communities have been for decades and decades. Ultimately, Madam Secretary and members of the board, it comes down to the value of the land. And if you have the time to go and peruse the DOR website, they'll tell you plainly what the MWRA believes our land is worth. For so-called annexed land here in Belchertown, some of which I believe we're on right now, it's $3,800 an acre. Might get you a shoebox in Boston. An acre of land, $3,800, is the valuation that MWRA has put on extracting 180 million gallons of water a day. $3,800 for an acre of land. So I have an offer. I'll take one. I mean, stopped at the bank before I came to the meeting. I'll pay a premium. I'll give you $4,000. Almost 10% more than what you say it is worth. And I don't know if we have any takers. I don't want to keep the bashful from speaking up. But I imagine you're not going to take my offer because you know how valuable this land is. You know that it's not $3,800 valuable. I think it would be hard to put a dollar amount on how important this watershed is for millions in the Commonwealth. And I can tell you, the people I represent, the folks in this room, believe it as a Commonwealth. We are doing our part. We are protecting this watershed by foregoing any type of economic development, which is a cornerstone to providing the basics of education, public safety, bathrooms in our police station. It's time for a change, and not an incremental one. It is time for wholesale change and how this land is appreciated, valued, and what our communities receive for doing this work. Madam Secretary, I'll close with this, and I appreciate you giving me the time I've taken today. The town of Pelham was once home to the largest fly fishing rod manufacturer in the world. It's gone. There's no connectivity. For those who may be their first or second visits to the Quabbin region, you might think it's always been this way. The development of the Quabbin ended industry. It ended connectivity. And we did it because we know we have a responsibility to provide clean, pure drinking water for millions. I think it's worth more than 0.3% of the nearly $1 billion MWRA budget to support the very communities who do this year in and year out. Again, thank you for coming out. I know these aren't the easiest conversations to have. And for those who know me, this isn't my usual tone. But it's a situation that takes a little bit of shock and awe, because we've gotten too comfortable with the status quo. I'll be polite, great dismay, the advisory board's letter on pilot payments. I invite you to go to New Salem when you have to use the bathroom and reconsider. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and Rep. Saunders, I couldn't have said it better myself than he did. He's been a wonderful advocate on this issue relative to pilot and what the communities in this Quabbin territory mean to us. And this delegation has worked on a united front to guarantee that Quabbin has a voice. Madam Secretary, and to the board members, thank you for being here today. I would implore you to make this a regular occurrence in terms of the MWRA board. It is so significant, and you can see in the faces and the number of people that are here today how important this watershed is to the people of Western Massachusetts. This is sacred territory, so its long history and what the communities have endured for decades means something, and it's something that is extremely unique. The legislative delegation works extremely hard to work with these individuals in this room here today to make sure that there is a voice here in Western Massachusetts. And let us not forget that if this watershed here in Western Mass crumbled, Eastern Massachusetts would be right behind it. That's how significant Quabbin Reservoir is to the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Representative Saunders talked about the extraction of water. I'm involved in a different kind of extraction here at Quabbin Reservoir, and that's the extraction of fish. I fish this Quabbin body regularly. Many of you know that. I'm glad to see the president of the Quabbin Fishermen's Association, Clayton Sidla, that is here today. We were on the water this morning at 6 a.m. out of Gate 43. For those of you that haven't been to Gate 43 recently, you will go there now and you will see something pretty significant in terms of a change and an evolution in the last year. And that is the reduction of the water level. We work extremely hard with Quabbin Fishermen's Association and DCR to put a second boat ramp at 43. beautiful, beautiful project that the state was supportive of, that the administration was supportive of, and we thank you for that support, as well as MWRA. But it's now a ramp that's not being utilized because the water level is so low. So we've had to actually move the dock out further because of the fact that that water level has decreased significantly. But I'm here to send a very unique message, and that is access to the Quabbin Reservoir. Now, many of us in the legislative delegation have been through this issue over the course of many years. They tried to restrict access when the zebra mussel came around. They tried to restrict the one-day fishing licenses. There's been all kinds of attempts to restrict access at this Quabbin Reservoir water body. And I can tell you in terms of this delegation, we are going to be hardcore relative to access. And right now, as you know, we are dealing with one of those issues relative to Potabog and O'Laughlin Pond. We've had meetings with the public about this. We've met with DCR. We've met with representatives of MWRA. But right now we have a restriction on these two water bodies. And the fishermen and the sportsmen that have been utilizing these for years are desperate to try and find a way to get access to these two water bodies once again. We have been unconvinced at this point that that restriction should continue to move forward without a better, more comprehensive plan. And remember this, and this is the most important thing that I cannot stress enough. When this water body was created, the disincorporation of these communities took place many years ago. Access to this reservoir was a key component to it moving forward. And as time goes on, and more entities come through and they want to restrict access to this water body, and places like O'Laughlin and places like Potabog, it concerns us as a delegation. Because soon behind it, then we will see a restriction to access of the main water body, and we are very, very mindful of how important this is to the people in Western Massachusetts. So I would implore you, Madam Secretary, and to the rest of the board members, to take a hardcore, careful look at this. There is a plan that's moving forward now, but we're not convinced that there is any light at the end of the tunnel to open access to these two ponds in the near future. We can do better in terms of providing that information to the public and the people that utilize these water bodies. And I can tell you that those individuals that are on those water bodies, and I'm one of them, they are the great stewards of the Quabbin Reservoir. They are the first people to report if something wrong is taking place on these lands, if something needs to be paid attention to, and if there's something that is not moving forward the way that it should, or the way that it is intended on these water bodies. So I would ask you to take a serious look, and I would ask this board to take a very serious look and provide the delegation some support as we move forward to create better access that has existed over the course of the last few years. We're now going on multiple years of closure of these water bodies. And we don't see any end in sight of opening up access. This is a serious issue for people that utilize this territory. So I am grateful that you are out here today. I'm grateful that you are here to listen. I know many people in the audience have a number of different issues relative to Quabbin Reservoir and the lands, territory that is contiguous with it. And I'm glad that you are here to take in all of that information. But we want to make sure that not only do you listen, but we want to see action post this meeting. It's so critically important. And to keep the level of communication with us is so, so important. It's such a significant component of making sure that we move forward in a positive direction. So I appreciate your time. I thank the board for coming out, and I hope you'll pay some careful consideration for our requests. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, members of the board. I'm not going to try to rehash everything. I think Rep. Saunders and Rep. Smola laid out quite a persuasive argument. One of the things that you said when you came here first was that this was perhaps the largest attended meeting that you've been to. And I think that's what I want to talk about, is I want to talk about the people here and how passionate they are, and how slighted they feel about what's happening here and their lack of access. As Rep. Smola mentioned, there's a lack of access. And we all know we've heard over and over about how the towns were dismantled, how industries were lost, all for this water supply. And I think what's important is, this group accepts it. Sometimes maybe begrudgingly, but they accept it because to them, it's access to them. We live in a dense state, And as we get out here to what some in Boston may call Western Massachusetts, but we call Central. But as we get out here into Western Massachusetts, the resource is not just the water, it's the environment. It's the ability for people to come out, enjoy their day, go hunting, go fishing, go hiking, anything that takes place in the outdoors. And that's what these folks here in this room and many others are just really passionate about. They're passionate advocates for their communities. And those communities are under threat. As we heard from Rep. Saunders, I represent the Worcester, New Hampshire district, which is the south and eastern part of the Quabbin. And we have towns that don't have water. We have towns that have heavily chlorinated water, that have brown water coming out of their pipes. And so they see this resource of billions of gallons of water, but they can't get it. And so, well, you know, there's something to be said, well, we get access, but it's getting restricted. Well, we get to hunt, but maybe not so much. We get to fish, well, yeah, but we're gonna cut that back too. And so what they see is their stewardship not being appreciated. They see their access being cut off. They see over and over again, I think they feel slighted. And I think we're gonna hear from some of them, and I would encourage you to just really listen and take that into consideration. It's so important for them. I know we have, and I saw the sign, so we're gonna bring it up, is, you know, we have issues here along this where we're looking at putting battery storage units on the watershed, which is a horrible idea in and of itself, but this is a different, I think that's something that the MWRA needs to consider and needs to have input into. Again, speaking of just that, you know, we brought this up at one of the hearings when we had on that battery park, and sure, you know, the arguments are, well, you know, there's very small chances that there's a problem. It's less than 2% of these have actual problems. But the thing is when they do have a problem, you have the potential to pollute Boston's water supply. And if that alone isn't enough to say this is a really bad idea, I don't really know what else is. Because when we look out at this watershed and we look out at that pristine water, to see it polluted is economic devastation for our state. And so I just think that, you know, listen to these people. They're passionate. They love this area. We all do. They love the resources that are here. They love having that access. And they deserve to have a seat at the table. They deserve to be heard. And they deserve to be able to take part in the resources that are here and the benefits of those resources. So I thank you for coming out. It's really important. And as Rep. Smola said, have more of the meetings out here. These people have great input. And it's just such a wonderful, wonderful resource for us all. And we really would hate to see anything adverse happen, and anything adverse for these folks. So thank you for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Comfort, the senior member of the Senate delegation, who's going to speak next. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Durant. Secretary and Executive Director Estes Margiassi, I just gave you some copies of individual testimonies. So today you're hearing, the MWRA board is hearing from the delegation. You're going to hear from a united town community. And I want you to understand that we put out a link to community members. We've received thousands of pieces of communication from our constituents around the Quabbin. So as you hear from us today, I hope you don't think that it's limited to just this room. It is an entire region asking for you to heed our concerns. So thank you, Secretary.
We'll put that on the record.
Thank you. And we can send that to you. We couldn't print out. We just printed out a selection. So thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Executive Director. Thank you to the MWRA Board of Directors for convening here in the Quabbin. Secretary, after the MWRA Advisory Board attended your April 2025 meeting, and Rep. Saunders alluded to this, and they asking you to join them in opposing the Quabbin equity legislation that I filed with Rep. Saunders, Aaron and I requested a similar meeting, as you know, so I want to thank you for allowing that meeting and actually convening in the Quabbin to listen to its people. It's much better that you hear directly from our constituents. I represent 7 of the dozen communities that ring the Quabbin Reservoir, stewarding, protecting, and sacrificing for Quabbin water, to which they do not have access, about which they have no real say, and for which they are compensated inadequately. The MWRA Advisory Board testified in support of quote-unquote balance, which they define as, quote, recognizing past sacrifices while ensuring no party bears a disproportionate burden going forward. I agree. No party should bear a disproportionate burden. Now, if our math is correct, the towns I represent receive about 3 cents a day from MWRA ratepayers. That's the average ratepayer. That's 3 pennies a day. So I ask the board to consider how you would adjust your business model and whether you could consider upping those pennies, and whether or not upping those pennies would be a disproportionate burden as you consider the following. And by the way, here the MWRA Advisory Committee has often criticized this effort as asking us to tax Eastern Mass ratepayers. In fact, not so. Not so. We're asking you to look at your nearly $1 billion budget and make adjustments. So I ask you to consider that while you think about the fact that over the past decade, MWRA pilot payments to Quabbin communities have increased just about 7%, while the cost of living, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, has increased more than 35%. Residents from MWRA receiving communities also benefit from waived joining fees worth millions of in value, no or low interest loans, and numerous other benefits conferred as a privilege of MWRA membership. How much does all of that cost ratepayers? Right? Why are we only focusing on what the cost to ratepayers would be should you compensate us more fairly? All of those benefits cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Last year's MWRA report on the feasibility of water and wastewater system expansion to the Quabbin region did not contemplate similar benefits or state aid for Quabbin communities. In fact, Secretary, maybe I read it differently, but I read it to say that the reservoir doesn't have sufficient water to supply all of Eastern Massachusetts communities for which the MWRA feasibility studies have already been completed, suggesting that even if Quabbin communities wanted to access Quabbin water, and not all don't, there would be none left for them, right? That's what that report ultimately concluded. Communities in Eastern Massachusetts are able to build new homes, open businesses, or avert PFAS disasters because of access to Quabbin water. Meanwhile, through volunteer and taxpayer-funded conservation, planning, and public safety positions, select boards, residents of the Quabbin protect and care for the watershed, receiving a fraction of what their labor, their foregone development, and this water is worth. The MWRA Advisory Board asked, what is fairness? It's a good question. You have received formal responses to that question from every single community that rings the Quabbin Reservoir. Every single one of them. And among their requests are more equitable pilot. Secretary, you talked about the governor's important effort. More representation on your body. There is no person, while I appreciate Ms. Wallowitz is here for the Connecticut River, there is no Quabbin seat. So our people do not have a voice that is Quabbin. And a regional fund to help Quabbin towns grapple with public safety or their own water future. I ask the board to consider if we in this region have borne a disproportionate burden as you contemplate that the New Salem Town Hall well ran dry and its pipes burst last winter. That's what Rep. Saunders is referring to, right? We have a dry well in a town hall that touches the Quabbin, where we can't use the bathroom and where the pipes burst last winter, and they had to cart in water if they could even be in the frozen building. Have we borne a disproportionate burden of water use restrictions during this current drought?
as already has been contemplated, as wells in the Quabbin run dry, while MWRA Communities Save One experience no restrictions? Did children and teachers at Swift River Elementary School, located about 6 miles from the Quabbin as the bird flies, bear a disproportionate burden when the well water they were drinking was found to have PFAS? And they had no money. They had no money to change out or remediate immediately. Did 84-year-old Robert Bowers bear a disproportionate burden last week when there was insufficient water in Wendell to douse a fire at his home? Firefighters tried pumping and hauling from a nearby pond, but the water was insufficient, so they sounded a second alarm and then a third alarm. 17 neighboring communities that are in the second ring around the Quabbin came hauling their own water because Wendell didn't have water access, but they were too late. Does the board agree that it would be fair to index watershed payments to inflation? If yes, friends, then we've been shorted out of millions of dollars in the last decade alone. Does the board believe that it's wise to heap benefits on MWRA receiving communities when the sending communities are left dreadfully underserved and in dangerous, and I don't use that word lightly, dangerous circumstances? As you know, and as Secretary, you said, Governor Healy has established a pilot commission to review and transform this broken formula. Pending in the environmental bond bill filed by Governor Healy is, as the Secretary talked about, 2 years of additional funding, which is a signal, I believe, that our governor and our lieutenant governor understand the disparities plaguing our region, and they inserted a down payment while the pilot commission does its work. Also pending in the environmental bond bill, which is now in conference, and I ask the MWRA to issue a formal statement of support for this, is a Quabbin seat on the MWRA board and the establishment of a Quabbin Host Community Trust Fund, which I ask the MWRA and the state to capitalize immediately when it is signed into law. So again, we want a change in pilot, we want a seat on the board, and we want a host community trust fund to deal with our own water future, our own public safety havoc, our school budget issues. So friends, I think it's no longer a question of whether there are inequities or if there will be fair recompense for the communities in the Quabbin. The question is simply when the bill will be finally paid. And we ask the board, with urgency and shared partnership, to join us in working toward a fair solution which is long, long overdue. Thank you very much.
That's it. That's it. Okay, donation. So what we're going to do next is we're going to call up by community in alphabetical order. So as you can see, there are a lot of people here, and we do want to hear from as many people as we can. So be respectful of your neighbors in terms of how long you're talking, and to the extent that we want everybody to be able to say what they want to say, but to the extent that you could be concise, that would be good, because I do want to make sure that we can hear from anybody who do have a hard stop. So let's start with Ethel.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Could you say your name so we can have it for the record?
Yes, I will. I bring you greetings from Athol. My name is Bill Chasen. I'm the chairman of the select board. And most of my words this morning are going to be borrowed. Stolen is so ugly a word. Borrowed from the town manager in a letter that he submitted. Athol is recognized as the hub of the North Quabbin region of the Commonwealth. And while the physical watershed includes a relatively small portion of South Athol within its bounds, The flooding of the lost towns of Dana, Enfield, Prescott, and Greenwich resulted in the dismantling and closure of the Athol and Enfield Railroad, more fondly known as the Rabbit Run, in 1935. The railroad served as an economic lifeline for over 60 years until the reservoir effectively cut Athol off from points south to Springfield and Palmer. The loss of this rail service had a negative impact on the economy of Athol, and it is something that the town still struggles with today. But today, Athol supports the efforts for fair recompense to each of the communities that still safeguard the primary source of drinking water to over 3.1 million consumers of the MWRA. The importance of the watershed communities to protect Metro Boston's primary reservoir, holding over 344 billion gallons as of June 1st of this year, must be recognized. And I do have one more question, remark, if you will, of the board regarding data centers. Now, we've heard a lot this morning from the representatives and Senator Comerford regarding lack of water in the area. How many data centers are there in the communities that get their water from the MWRA? How many data centers? And how many gallons of water do those data centers consume? Do we have an answer? Yep.
Relatively few.
Relatively few?
And we're talking things that are like the size of a small building like this.
They're not those big.
Not the big mega data centers?
Not yet.
Nothing like you see on the news elsewhere in the country.
Well, that's nice to know, but
We understand the point.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. That concludes my remarks. Thank you very much. And we do appreciate having you folks here. I'm sure I speak for everyone in the room that we would certainly welcome further meetings out here as well.
Anyone else from Apple?
No,
Okay.
I'm the sole
All right.
person.
So Harry's next. Harry.
Good morning, Madam Secretary, Executive Director, members of the board. My name is Richard Stevens. I'm a member of the Select Board in Barry. Today we have Town Administrator Melanie Jackson in attendance and Select Board Member Matt Rodinas. And Dr. Marshall, our chairperson, could not attend but sends her wishes and greetings to you all. The Town of Barry is joining our fellow Quabbin Reservoir towns in pursuit of equitable opportunities Massachusetts Water Resource Authority may be able to provide to each of us. Each of our communities has given up liberties with recent changes to watershed land access in pursuit of the greater Boston area having quality drinking water that comes from the streams and underground aquifers within our towns. Barry alone is facing a portable well water crisis with one town well offline due to high mineral counts, a second town well within one aquifer no longer yielding the daily gallonage required, and a third well being taxed to the limit in order to supplement the ailing well supply, a water supply the Barry residents rely on daily. Our limited access to water at this time is detrimental to Barry's economic development and housing initiatives. Barry actively hired an engineering firm who has identified potential new well sites with underground aquifers that could support the residential needs of supplying potable water and for fire protection. Construction of a new well has a projected cost of over $5 million, and a treatment plant for the well currently offline due to the high mineral count is estimated over $3 million. Having access to the Quabbin Reservoir drinking water will lift a huge financial burden on the town of Barry in each of our towns. It would enable Barry to invite new businesses and endorse new housing Today, we ask the MWRA to consider Berry and other communities' financial and potable water needs going forward, as each community has contributed to the Quabbin Water Program for decades. Respectively, Richard Stevens, thank you very much for hearing us today.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Next up is Belchertown.
Oh, can I just stand here? You trying to make it? Exactly. You have a choice between being cool and being seen on the camera. Unfortunately.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Quabbin from Belchertown. First, one of the things I'd want to add is if you do want to make this an annual event, and I strongly encourage that as well, echoing everybody else, we in Belchertown would be glad to host this at our town hall. Just let us know. We'd be glad to do it. Much bigger facility, much cooler.
We're going to have microphones as well.
Yes. We'll have all the AV there and everything else. Good morning. My name is Ed Camel. I'm a longtime resident of Belchertown, a board member of the Friends of Quabbin, and vice chair of the Belchertown Communications Committee. However, I'm speaking to you today not in these roles, but as an avid nature photographer who spends a great deal of time in the Quabbin watershed, where I see firsthand the impact of the drought upon the Quabbin. And this makes me ask a question, given today's climate-driven conditions. Are we having our Lake Powell moment? And this is a key opportunity not to be wasted. The water level of the Quabbin has been on a downward slope for over 2 years, and now, as of 15 minutes ago, it's 10 feet down for the latest readings online. I just checked. And that's approximately 80% of capacity. If you look at this chart here, too, on the wall, you can see the trends there that are happening. While the Quabbin and the Wachusett system still represents an extraordinary reserve, I feel it is cause for concern. It's going to take years to restore the water levels, and there are a number of other communities in the MWRA system undergoing significant droughts that may need to activate their emergency connections to the system, creating even more demand. Climate change means the future will not resemble the past. Longer dry periods, warmer temperatures, and changing precipitation patterns make demand management increasingly important. So, are we having our Lake Powell moment? In the western United States, if they had taken stronger action earlier, would they be in the water crisis they face now? Can we use this as a teachable moment to make proactive changes in how people use water to avoid a similar crisis here in our own backyard? Of the 35 communities that receive Quabbin water as their primary water supply, only one community, Reading, has implemented water conservation. More than 140 public water suppliers outside the MWRA system elsewhere in Massachusetts have implemented mandatory restrictions because of drought conditions, including us. Even modest reductions in water use by the 2.7 million residents that receive Quabbin water, together with commercial and institutional customers, could save millions of gallons during a drought. So here's the ask to the board. To avoid a Lake Powell moment, I ask that you act proactively and can reconsider your current policy of not imposing water restrictions until the water levels drop even further. Water conservation should be a shared statewide effort, and the MWRA has an opportunity to lead by working with member communities to develop a conservation strategy that reflects today's climate-driven conditions. This is an opportunity to build long-term behavioral change when it comes to water conservation and demand reduction. My professional career is focused on fire prevention and community risk reduction, and I know the difficulty of selling prevention to the public firsthand. Trust me, I know it. However, just because it's hard does not mean that it should not be done, because these benefits dramatically outweigh the effort. So the question is not whether we have enough water. The question is whether we are doing everything we reasonably can do today to protect it for tomorrow. The best time to conserve water is before a crisis, not during one. I really appreciate your time and listening to me. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Lisa Lassard Pearson.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Lisa Lassard Pearson, and I've had the privilege of serving as past chair, vice chair, and member of the Belchertown Select Board for the past 40 years. The Quabbin Reservoir is often called one of the greatest engineering achievements in Massachusetts history. It is also a commitment to provide clean, safe drinking water to millions of residents. As water supply challenges grow across the region, that commitment is increasingly important. For nearly a century, the communities surrounding the Quabbin have helped uphold it. Today, I am asking the Commonwealth to uphold its commitment to us. Let me be clear. Belchertown is proud to be the steward of one of the Commonwealth's most important natural resources. We understand the need to protect the Quabbin Reservoir, and we are not asking for those protections to be weakened. But stewardship carries costs. While millions benefit from the Quabbin every day, the responsibility for protecting it is concentrated in a small number of communities like mine. Land surrounding the reservoir are permanently restricted from residential and commercial development that would otherwise sustain tax revenue, local businesses, housing, and essential services. For Belchertown, this means thousands of acres cannot contribute to our local economy. For neighboring Quabbin communities, many of which have lost an even greater share of that developable land, the impact is more severe. Because our regional economies are interconnected, these constraints affect us all. In addition, these restrictions limit our ability to respond to statewide priorities such as housing production and economic growth. While other communities can expand to meet demand, Quabbin communities are asked to absorb the consequences of limited growth without the same tools to adapt. This creates an imbalance that undermines both local resilience and broader state goals. This isn't just a Belchertown issue. It's a regional issue and a statewide responsibility. The Quabbin is a statewide asset. All communities that rely on its water share in its benefits. The communities that protect it should not bear a disproportionate share of its costs. As you consider the future of the Quabbin watershed, I ask that you recognize surrounding communities as essential partners. Strong communities reinforce a strong watershed. Sustaining the Quabbin requires sustaining the communities that protect it. I urge you to provide equitable funding that reflects lost tax base, targeted economic development to offset growth limitation, and policy tools that allow for housing and local investment while maintaining environmental protections. Strengthening these communities strengthens the Commonwealth, and I thank you for your time.
Howard.
Good morning, everybody. I am Justine Pipiano, the town administrator at the town of Hardwick. Thank you so much for having us. I am joined by Bill Zinni, the chair of the Conservation Commission, Bill Tinker, the vice chair of the select board, and Jeff Schaff, who's the chair of the select board. Something interesting that I heard about New Salem was about the bathroom at the police station. Well, Hardwick doesn't even have a police station. In 2024, Hardwick hosted the towns around the Quabbin at Eagle Hill School in support of Senator Comerford's legislation. Two of the members here, Bill Zinni and Bill Tinker, testified on Beacon Hill in support of the legislation. This is something that's very important to Hardwick. I'm looking around at the other town administrators and town managers in this room, and I share their frustration. It's getting harder and harder to balance a budget. We're not looking to get rich, we're looking for sustainability. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Zinni.
Thanks again to the board for having us. Just two brief, quick points that I'll read. I'll read two quick, brief points. We in the Quabbin host towns consider ourselves teammates with DCR's Division of Water Supply Protection. We share the custodial responsibility for helping to ensure the water quality of this critical water supply for Eastern Mass. The water that fills the reservoir runs off adjacent town land, and its quality depends on land use activities reviewed within our towns. I did hand out a map, and there are a few around the room showing the overlap. Quabbin hosts over 5,000, or Hardwick hosts over 5,900 acres of Quabbin watershed lands. Lands in state ownership, lands in private ownership within the watershed boundary, as you know, and over 1,200 acres of submerged Quabbin bottom for which minimal compensation is received. Our town's pilot payment for slightly over 4,700 acres averages only $33 per acre. And the town continues to forego property tax it might collect if the division land were in private ownership. Second point, perspective as a town board member, undeveloped farm and forest land in the host towns is currently experiencing increasing pressure for subdivision and unplanned development. No surprise. Likely putting Quabbin water quality at increasingly greater risk over time. The current water purity requires little treatment and related expense, but increasing human activities and contaminants could make future treatment necessary. Like the other towns, Hardwick Select Board, Planning Board, Board of Health, Conservation Commission, and Building Inspector are mainly volunteer or limited time positions. As such, we have an increasingly harder time keeping up with project review to administer zoning and Wetland Protection Act regulations and building codes. Hardwick residents and officials hope to continue our important stewardship and partnership role. We respectfully ask that consideration be given to providing additional financial support to help make it possible. Thanks.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Secretary and the board. My name is William Tinker. For nearly a century, the communities surrounding the Quabbin Reservoir have faithfully protected one of the greatest public water supplies in America. When the Commonwealth enacted Chapter 375 of the Acts of 1926 to create the Quabbin Reservoir, it compensated individual property owners whose lands were taken through eminent domain. But it never created a lasting compensation partnership with the watershed communities that continue to protect this water supply. Today, Hardwick and other watershed communities continue to protect drinking water for nearly 3 million people. Yet many of us struggle with failing infrastructure, crumbling roads, and loss of essential services. Our hospital is gone. Our ambulance is gone. Our police station is in another town. This is some of the cost of the Commonwealth, of protecting the Commonwealth's drinking water. But we are doing our part. But we cannot continue to carry this burden alone. Not long ago, our community was offered $2 million annually for a regional landfill that we believe threatened the watershed. We said no. But I ask you this, what happens when the next offer is $5 million or $10 million? What happens when the weight of generations of neglect outweigh principle? This legislation isn't about charity. It's about creating a partnership that should have existed from the very beginning. A partnership between the Commonwealth, the MWRA, and the watershed communities that have protected this water for generations. We have kept our promise for nearly a century. Now I ask the Commonwealth, the MWRA, to become our partner for the next century. Thank you very much.
I'm Jeff Shaw. I'm the Hardwick Select Board Chair, And really, I can't say anything more other than to emphasize that this is about fairness. It isn't about getting more that we don't deserve. This is about being fair to our town, Hardwick, and all the other surrounding towns. We're just looking for a fair share of, Representative Sanders called it an extraction. It's an extraction from our communities. And we're just looking for some sort of compensation to allow us to live better lives here. We have times, we're all struggling, and I understand that. This is about fairness. Thank you very much.
New Salem.
Greetings. I'm Sue Cloutier from the Select Board of New Salem, and I thank you very much for inviting us to be here today. It's very important for our tiny town of around 1,000 people to be heard. We need to have a voice with the MWRA. And I used to be a school teacher, so I should be able to speak up, but it was my rule in the classroom that somebody was in trouble if I raised my voice at all or to have the door. So I'm that kind of a teacher.
We're in trouble today, so you
I don't think you're in trouble. I think we need more equity. I think you need to understand the tiny towns that protect the water that we all appreciate. Our residents are older. The gray hair shows. Close to a majority of us are over 60. We're on fixed incomes. We don't provide a lot of tax revenue for our municipality. And we tried to get an override. It didn't pass. Our schools are hurting because of that. Our fire and our police and our library. Because we tried to have a democratic override question so that there be something in it for everybody, which is important. And we want the MWRA to recognize that we're part of the Commonwealth and we share what we can and we try to be active citizens. That's why we're here today. All of our town lives on local sewage, septic systems. Our houses are old, most of them. Some new people came to town because we worked very hard with other communities to get high-speed internet. And we have it. We have fiber now. So that we're not gonna lose our town. It was that kind of a choice that the residents made when they voted to have the money to be able to do that. And the state did help us. We don't want a municipal water supply, but we'd love to have a well that's a public drinking water well, so that when somebody has PFAS in their well, or their well runs dry because it's a dug well, and a lot of people in town have dug wells, they don't have to go to the store to buy water to drink and make their food. They can come to a tap in the town and get the water jug filled up and go home. So I make a simple plea. All of us love our town. We love nature. I'm a certified nature nut. I'm out the way Ed is, taking pictures at Quabbin all the time. But we can't leave behind all our municipal functions. We have to be able to survive as a town, and we're looking to you for some help doing that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Hill. I'm the town coordinator of the town of New Salem, which is like a baby version of a town administrator. So, a little bit of background, we're a population of just under 1,000 people. And I do have to say, it takes a lot to get a small town like us moving, so congrats. I want you to understand that New Salem is a community that genuinely adores the Quabbin, really cares about the watershed. I would say the majority. There's a couple of descendants of the original towns who do occasionally tell me that they go and pee in the Quabbin as revenge. So, a little bit of a background on that, but most of the town genuinely cares about the watershed and cares about protection of the watershed. Our community takes that responsibility incredibly seriously. We do want to speak in support of an act relative to the Quabbin watershed and regional equity and really share some examples of how a town like us is being taken advantage of. So 91% of our town is not able to be developed because the watershed. It's all protected. 91% of the land in our town, which is massive. Yet only 20% of our operating budget comes from pilot payments. That is a huge disproportionate number. We are thrilled to be getting that 20%, so please don't take that as we're not happy with it. But as Sue said, we have an aging population. We can't tax more. People are already having to move out of town, and hate to break it to you, there's nowhere cheaper to go in the state. So they're being forced out of their homes and out of the state that they grew up in because of the increased cost of living, and we just have to either tax them more or let services fail. A couple of parts that I can talk about where we are charged more because of our location. We have to replace a failing culvert. The culvert, again, is very expensive. We're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars, which for a town our size is a massive chunk of our income. And we were told recently by the engineer that due to the location of the culvert and the fact that the water runs into the watershed, we have to be charged an additional $8,000 in testing because we are a watershed system. Nothing else. This is a minor inequity of things that we have to pay for and no one else in the state has to pay for. On top of that, our emergency response routinely responds to events in the Quabbin. For example, we had an aircraft crash in the Quabbin a couple of months ago. Hopefully you're all aware of that. If not, you should probably read the news. But this person crashed into the watershed, into the Quabbin, and thankfully survived. And that is because of our emergency responders. It was a New Salem emergency response that arrived first. We're the ones that were able to spot the person in the water, and it is our emergency responders that were able to save this person's life. They were first on scene, and that is funded by New Salem taxpayers, not by the watershed. On top of that, our emergency response routinely have to break the locks to get into the watershed, because though they have asked for keys in the past, they have been denied. So they are required to respond and then lectured when they do, because they're breaking locks. Additionally, we, as you've heard, have a hand-dug shallow well for our town hall. It's beautiful, it's stunning, it is haunted, I'm certain. And it dries up routinely, just about annually, which is really fun. It's our town hall, it's our senior center, it's our police station, it's our board of health, it's our building inspector, it's everyone all in one building, and we use water. It's very fun for me, who works full-time in that building. So these are just a couple of inequities, places that you can see that we are genuinely struggling because we are in the watershed. We are reaching a critical point. As mentioned, we failed our override and we are out of money. We believe that there are ways to strengthen this partnership, and a lot of that is equitable payments towards us. We would love an updated pilot approach, as of course we're getting $20 per acre annually. It's so fun for us. And then we would also love greater communication if we could figure out a way for us to have access to the watershed without breaking the locks every time. If we could figure out better response times and better ways for people who are not our tiny town to pay for that emergency response, that would be stellar. Thank you so much for listening to us. I will turn the time over to Rick.
Thank you. Emily, thank you very much. Madam Secretary, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I would especially like to thank our Senator, Joe Comerford, and our Representative Saunders. Those were two of the most compelling arguments that I've heard in a long time here in the history of the Commonwealth. I'm a former Assistant Secretary of Environmental Affairs, and I'm currently the chair of the Select Board. And I'd really like to focus on just a couple of examples of things. So Emily mentioned a problem with a failing culvert in town. That culvert, downstream of the culvert, belongs and is under the control of DCR. I really do apologize for that. Valley Medical's trying to reach me. I don't know why. I think I'm okay. Upstream of that culvert is owned by Massachusetts Audubon Society. The culvert failed, was a massive failure. Part of the road collapsed. It had to be shut down, and it cost us, after the engineers, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Every penny of our Chapter 90 money had to pay for us to replace the culvert with the DCR and Mass Audubon, upstream and downstream of that. All right? And none of the money could be used for any other purpose in town. And I'll tell you, those of you who serve on select boards, you know what road issues are like, right? When people come in to yell at you about a road, they're not being nice about it, right? I mean, I've been threatened by people, all right? And this is a position that I'm in because of our lack of resources and the lack of fair and equitable participation by the state in the management of our community and the watershed that we are responsible for. The other thing I'd like to say is New Salem does not have a town hall. We have not had a functioning town hall in somewhere around 10 years now. Every time we hold a meeting, I mean, this would be a big room for us in New Salem. We have the school, but the school, it's expensive to open it at night for special meetings. We use the library, we use the various buildings that the town purchased from the New Salem Academy, which you may know was the first free secondary school in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, right? We have an incredibly proud history, and we are being brought to our knees by this kind of reverse environmental justice, in which those of us who are responsible for protecting the resources that make the state function and economically prosperous influence us in exactly the opposite way. And so I ask you to do everything you possibly could to help us out of this situation. Thank you.
Orange.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear me okay in the back?
We're good now.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Tepper, and thank you to the MWRA board. Senator Comerford and Rep. Saunders' work on the bringing regional equity back to the Quabbin. My name is Matthew Fortier. I'm the town administrator for the town of Orange, and I'll be the last town administrator for the town of Orange. The town of Orange recently voted to adopt a charter. We're moving to a town manager form of government under the charter that was enacted on July 1st, 2026. At town meeting, the town also voted in full support of the Quabbin resolution bill to bring equity to the Quabbin watershed towns. And I just want to say that I'm in full support of all my neighbors around the Quabbin, and I'm in full support of pilot reform, and I think that this is going to be a nice dovetail into pilot reform, which is for another day.
What I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about the history of Orange's position, the local economic reality in the town of Orange, and then our asks for the town of Orange, and quite frankly for all the towns in the North Quabbin and the Quabbin as a whole. Orange is a historic community. It was formed in 1810 from portions of surrounding towns. Today we're home to 7,600 residents who take immense pride in our region. To many of you on this board, Eastern Massachusetts is home. I was born and raised in the city of Worcester, so I also understand what it's like to think about a community that you don't live in. I didn't know anything about Orange or the Quabbin as a Worcester resident, though I was able to enjoy the water that was coming from the Wachusett Reservoir that made Worcester a thriving and robust city, only second place to Boston, who is enjoying the water from the Quabbin that makes Boston a thriving and robust city and an economic engine for the state of Massachusetts. The state of Massachusetts is one of the wealthiest states in the United States of America. If you compare the Commonwealth to other countries around the globe, Massachusetts stands in the top, where we have more wealth than many countries on the entire planet Earth. And yet we're faced with this regional equity issue that we can't address as the Commonwealth. And I think that, Ms. Tepper, I think we can address this, and I think that this board can support. To be very clear, Orange is one of the poorest communities in the Commonwealth. Look it up, look at the statistics. Some of the lowest median income in the state. We have a very tough time with economic development. The reason that the towns in the Quabbin have a tough time with economic development is not only land use restrictions related to the watershed and the other land use restrictions related to, say, state-owned forests, etc. One of the issues that the towns have in the Quabbin Valley is that you have no north to south economic activity. We cannot transact north to south. You can't send a commerce boat down the Quabbin. There are no ports on the Quabbin. There's ports in Boston. There are highways that go to the North Shore and the South Shore. You have to meander through the woods to get from the top of the Quabbin, which is where Orange is. We're at the north side of the Quabbin. To get down here, I had to drive 45 minutes on a highway. I could have gotten here in 15 minutes. That economic opportunity does not exist. We cannot develop the most valuable land in the Quabbin because, quite frankly, and as we all know, the most valuable land is waterfront property. This inverse relationship causes our assessment of land value to decrease significantly. So essentially what's happened is, because we flooded the valley, we flooded the valley with water, and we said, well, you can't develop it, and now we're saying, and since you can't develop it, it has no value. We've created this irony. It's an ironic situation. If you go to the Finger Lakes in New York, you have very expensive property, similar situation and land shape form in the Finger Lakes in New York, and those property values are very high, and they have a robust college campuses and wine industry, and people can go to the Finger Lakes and celebrate and have great opportunities to gather as families. You can't gather on the Quabbin. You can't even walk a dog on the trails in the Quabbin. You can't tell me that we have a robust tourist economy out in the Quabbin when you have to rent a small metal dingboat to go out with a low horsepower engine. And how many of us in here have dogs? You can't even bring your dog. There's no campgrounds. There's no Airbnbs along the Quabbin. You have to be outside the Quabbin and drive in. So, our asks are straightforward. The town of Orange voted in full support of the Quabbin resolution for regional equity. The town of Orange would like to see additional representation on the MWRA board. I think it's only fair that the towns and communities that are sending water to Boston have a voice on the board. And we all know that this is essentially a public comment. You can take it how you will. It's a lot different when you have a voice on the board. We're asking for pilot reform. I'm not going to put numbers out there. I've seen numbers floating around the room. I think we all need to take a hard look at it. I think Tying it to inflation is a good start, and I think at looking at what the value would have been otherwise if they never flooded the valley, I think that would be important to look at. And I would also like to ask that because the region is so depressed and we've been so depressed economically for such a long time, that the MWRA board works with our senators, with our representatives, and with the governor to create that capital fund so that we can fix our own water infrastructure. Orange also has a water use restriction right now. If we didn't have a water use restriction in Orange right now, it would impact the water flowing underground to Lake Mattawa that flows south to the Quabbin itself. You guys would have an even bigger challenge ahead of you in Boston and for your ratepayers around the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Paula?
Good morning. It's still morning, right? Yeah, it's still morning. Okay. Good morning. My name is Tara Loomis, and I'm a Select Board Vice Chair for the Town of Pelham, whose residents voted at the town meeting on the recommendation of the Select Board to support the Quabbin equity legislation. I want to start with a number. There's lots of numbers today, and I'm not going to go through all the math, but I do want to start with a number that is important to Pelham and its residents. 1/3. That's how much of Pelham, nearly 1,200 acres, state-owned Quabbin watershed land. Land we don't develop, we don't tax, we can't touch, and because we understand what's at stake for 3 million people downstream who drink this water every day, we take that responsibility seriously. We've adopted strict wetland protections, we've kept our footprint small, and we've done our part for nearly 90 years. We're struggling to keep our one school operating. We have a commission looking at whether or not it's feasible to continue. We have a part-time fire chief, and everyone else in the fire department are volunteers, and we have a part-time fire chief. So our public infrastructure is shrinking. Now I want to acknowledge something directly. First, let me also thank you for having us here today. This board has taken the formal position in opposition to this legislation. And I'm not here to pretend that disagreement away. I'm here because I believe that beneath that disagreement, over the mechanism, we share more than we dispute. And because the community I represent believes this board is capable of hearing our case on its merits. And I think we heard Hardwick use the word partnership, and I cannot underscore the importance of that word. Let me start with what we do agree on. The board has served for over 40 years as a disciplined steward of one of the finest public water systems in the country. You watch every dollar. You fight for affordability for the families and businesses in the 61 communities you represent. Pelham respects that work because we do the same work on the other side of the aqueduct with volunteers. The Quabbin working through the Quabbin-Wachusett system helps deliver 200 million people every day. That water arrives without filtration because the watershed that produces it is so carefully protected by the watershed towns. Your own advisory board has repeatedly emphasized the enormous cost that would result if the filtration waiver were ever lost. We are the communities, there's a lot of them in this room, that help protect that waiver every day. That is the answer to the claim that this legislation offers, and I quote, no benefit to the communities paying for it. The benefit is already flowing east, and it has been for nearly 90 years. And the history matters here. I'm not going to go through everything, but we know that the towns were disincorporated, Dana, Prescott, Greenwich, Enfield, to create the Quabbin. Families were relocated, cemeteries were moved. But the economic industry in the corridor between these towns and Worcester was also obliterated. And I think the gentleman from Orange just talked a lot about the impact of that. Pelham hosts protected watershed lands that help safeguard the Quabbin Reservoir, as well as drinking supplies for Amherst and includes reservoir lands and Pelham and Shutesbury and groundwater sources in the surrounding region. We can't develop anymore. As a matter of fact, we just developed our first affordable housing units in 2024. It took that long to build affordable housing in our town because our footprint is so limited. Watershed restrictions and Commonwealth land ownership have foreclosed development opportunities that any of your member communities would consider ordinary. We accept those restrictions because the mission is worth it. But acceptance is not the same as compensation. And here is the irony we live with. Our residents cannot drink the water we protect. During declared droughts, our streams run low, our towns conserve, while full-service MWRA communities, with the exception of Reading, continue outdoor watering with bottled water. Wells in our region run dry or test positive for PFAS. You've heard the story of Swift River, won't repeat it. But that's an example that that underscores when we say the current arrangement is inequitable. This is what we mean. It's not an abstraction. You think about those children for several years carrying water bottles within sight of 200 million gallons a day of the cleanest drinking water in America. Water their towns protect and cannot touch. Now to the objection I know is foremost in this room. The cost and who bears it. I will not insult this board by pretending that the $35 million that was mentioned is trivial, but I will say two things. First, the funding mechanism is exactly the kind of question the legislation supporters are prepared to negotiate, including the role of the Commonwealth, which created this obligation in the 1920s and not should be absent from resolving it. Opposing the bill outright forecloses that negotiation. Engaging with it shapes the outcome for everyone. Second, whatever the mechanism, the principle should not be controversial. The communities whose stewardship helps keep this system affordable, clean, and unfiltered deserve a seat at the table and a meaningful stake in the future of the system. Which brings me to my actual ask today. Pelham's resolution does not only endorse a bill, it endorses a partnership. And it names 4 things the board could support today and not even wait on Beacon Hill. Representation of watershed communities in the WRA governance, investment in watershed infrastructure and water quality protection, technical and engineering assistance for the watershed municipalities, and equitable drought management across the Quabbin system. None of these threatens ratepayer affordability. All of them build the trust that 90 years of one-way arrangement has eroded. We are approaching the centennial of the acts that created the Quabbin. And the question before us is whether the next 100 years looks like the last 100, or like a genuine partnership between the people who drink the water and the people who protect it. Thank you for your time.
Well, these are all hard acts to follow. I'm Deborah Boudry, Chair of the Petersham Select Board. I hope you can hear me. I want to thank the board and secretary for hearing us today. We appreciate the opportunity to provide you with our perspective and our request for action. We seek from the MWRA full recognition of the inherent and the financial value of the green infrastructure provided by the natural landscape and watershed, and of the town's ongoing effort to protect the public and working land. We further seek financial support to enable this stewardship to safeguard our communities and the MWRA's mission. The town's stewardship directly and financially benefits the entire area served by the MWRA through maintaining water quality and enhancing the conditions of sensitive environmental areas. This avoids
contamination of water and thereby avoids prohibitive construction and infrastructure costs that would be necessary to treat that water if this stewardship fails. Petersham's always been a small community. We are well under, we're around 1,300 now. Our maximum is late 1700s, I think we were 1,800. But the increasing costs of public services of all kinds are driven by increased regulation as well as by general inflation. And frankly, our tax base cannot keep up with that. Police, fire, and essential town services, as in so many other communities, are provided by volunteers and a few part-time people. And the combination of increased costs and regulation are driving costs beyond what we can adapt to. Additional traditional development, commercial, residential, industrial, frankly would worsen the dilemma for us rather than make it better. The cost of public services far exceed the cost of the relatively modest increases that we would get from increased taxes from development. That's even before you look at the question of environmental degradation. Like the other towns, our water supply does not come from the Quabbin, but faces increased challenges due to drought. And frankly, cannot sustain additional traditional development in this case. We share the concerns of our neighbors regarding the water supply and appreciate the advocacy of our representatives in the legislature. To that end, we request financial support for our local boards and departments who manage the legal and physical aspects of forests, streams, and infrastructure with limited services, limited finances. We are looking for immediate supplemental funding for our fire department, increased representation of all 12 communities, including us, in the governance at all levels, and also in VCR management of watershed lands. We look for increased investment in the watershed infrastructure for water quality, water protection, and waste management, technical and engineering assistance, including analysis of the watershed, of the aquifers that serve our towns. And again, like others, we also seek equitable drought management policies across the system. The MWRA and its predecessor agencies have been charged with providing clean water for much of the state, and it's a challenging task. It's going to become more challenging with climate condition change and development patterns. So local taxpayers alone cannot afford to support the services that are necessary here, and we have the MWRA bring its bonding capacity and financial capacity to help local communities address both our needs and the needs of watersheds as well. We appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today about it and look forward to working with you in partnership as we move forward.
Sir, so we have Belchertown. Let's move on then to Shrewsbury.
Shrewsbury.
I did practice all the names for my students. We have a running joke that Shrewsbury, not Shrewsbury.
Good morning, Madam Secretary and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Elaine Palaio, and alongside my colleagues, we're here representing the town of Shrewsbury. And I am probably not going to say anything new to you, but I have been a teacher all my life, and I know that you need to hear it more than once for it to stick. Every day, the infrastructure governed by this board delivers clean, world-class drinking water to nearly 3 million people across Massachusetts. That's roughly 43% of our state's entire population. It's a monumental achievement of engineering and environmental stewardship. But that water doesn't appear by magic. It's filtered, protected, and safeguarded by small rural communities in western and central Massachusetts, communities like Shutesbury. Shutesbury has a population of fewer than 2,000 residents. We're bigger than some of the other towns here. We have about 1,700 residents. Well over 1/3 of our town's total landmass is state-owned forest, permanently preserved to protect the Quabbin watershed. As you have been told, we can't even walk our dogs on there. We're proud of our role as stewards of this invaluable resource, but pride does not pave our roads, it doesn't fund our schools, and it doesn't balance our municipal budget.
Hi, Jim Walton from the Shutesbury Select Board and previously from the Shutesbury Finance Committee. So I am delegated the numbers part of our discussion, and where I feel comfortable. Yeah. We have, and these numbers are all facts. It's data. It's Massachusetts government generated data. So this is all important, relevant facts. We have about 5,000 acres, 30% of our land. 5,000 acres, 30% of the land. By the way, we're up on the, if you look out that window, we're up toward the northwest end. That's a long way from Shrewsbury. So 30% of our land is locked up, all related to watershed. We can't go there other than be good stewards. And it acts as a very severe economic handcuff for us as a town. It suffocates our local property tax base, it freezes commercial development, and severely limits new housing. Because our town is restricted from growing, a disproportionate financial burden is shifted directly onto our residential taxpayers, just to keep basic municipal services running. Shutesbury generates an average of $510 per acre on property tax revenue from the developed land. So $510 per acre in tax revenue from the developed land. From the land that's locked in with the pilot program in Quabbin, we get $60 per acre. So that's $510 versus $60 per acre. So if you compare that with the state average per acre is $130 per acre. If you look at the eastern part of the state, it's much higher than that. The western part of the state brings the average value down a lot. An example would be Haverhill. Haverhill is $8,545 an acre per the Department of Revenue. That's how much they get for pilot per acre. Because this land is restricted, the pilot program provides us just under $300,000. That's per year, $300,000 per year. If the watershed land were developed and taxed at our normal tax rate, the rate that all of our citizens at Shutesbury pay, it would yield over $2.5 million. That's $2.5 million versus $300,000. So instead, the current pilot compensates us for just over 11.8% of the potential tax value. Shutesbury taxpayers are effectively subsidizing the drinking water of eastern Massachusetts to the tune of over $2.2 million in potential revenue every single year. Meanwhile, our small municipal operations, police, fire chief, fire, etc., schools, face unique hidden strains. We bear significant operational costs with a severely constrained budget. We are effectively freezing Shutesbury's economic future for the benefit of the Commonwealth. And we cannot continue to carry this financial weight alone. Haley?
So my name is Haley Bolton. I'm the Shutesbury Town Administrator, and today we are standing in solidarity with our fellow watershed communities and asking the NWRA to move past an outdated transactional relationship and step into a modern, equitable partnership. We are asking for your board's active support on the core concepts laid out in the Quabbin equity legislation. First, modernizing the pilot program. Payments in lieu of taxes must reflect the true modern value of the land we sacrificed for the state's water supply. Second, establishing the Quabbin Host Community Development Trust Fund. This will provide predictable, long-term investments to sustain the municipal operations of the towns doing the stewarding. Third, board representation. Shutesbury and our fellow host communities deserve a seat at the table. If our land is vital to your decision-making, then our voices must be part of your governance. And finally, regional water equity. We must provide opportunities and evaluate opportunities to provide clean water to our struggling neighbors in Western Massachusetts before looking to expand the service anywhere else.
So I just want to reiterate that we're not asking for a handout, we're asking for equity. For decades, Shutesbury has done its part to keep the taps flowing in Boston and beyond, along with all the other communities in this room. Please work with us. Let's champion these reforms and treat Shutesbury not as a location on a watershed map, but as a true partner in the Commonwealth's future. We thank you for being here and listening to us.
Where? Somebody, where? Wendell?
Where?
Where's Go? Okay, Stuart. Okay.
And that is Stuart.
Hello. Thank you for being here, and more importantly, thank you for listening. And really, good luck. I will try. I really hope you heard Shutesbury's message. It was perfect. So I will be brief in restating what they have done. On behalf of the Ware Select, Stuart Beckley, Ware Town Manager, on behalf of the Ware Select Board and Ware Town Meeting, just thank you for being here. Ware Town Meeting a month ago reviewed, discussed, and voted on this option and voted 104 to nothing to support it. Just want you to know, Ware Town Meeting does not vote unanimously on anything, so it's a big deal. I'm going to work on Shutesbury's message. I'm not going to talk about money, funding. I hope that the board has heard the fairness discussion and takes it to heart. I would like to talk about other things. Salem mentioned emergency services and their rescue that they provided. When Quabbin performs its controlled burns, it is our fire department and others that are serving as on-call and on-site backup. We are providing service at the town of Ware's cost. The town of Ware's water on any given day is poor in quality. Our water quality is poor. This is caused by manganese and iron in the water and the requirements we now face environmentally to chlorinate, which brings out the manganese and iron and means that we are providing on a fairly regular basis when the system is being stirred up a brown water to our residents. It's safe to drink, but no one would want to drink it. In fairness, 85 years ago, the town was offered the opportunity to hook up to the reservoir. We declined because at that time, Ware had pristine water. Did not have chemicals that had to be added to, did not have 85-year-old and more infrastructure. We still have wooden pipes in some streets. There's a need. The message I hope you take away is one of partnership. It's just absolutely important to recognize the amount of resources that the board and the MWRA has. 5 years ago, we did a study of what it would take to now hook up. At a minimum, it's $30 million. And that doesn't even cover the old infrastructure. We believe you have the resources that you could help any community here, water in an emergency, engineering, knowledge, the sharing of the data. We can't regularly understand the flow of the Ware River and Ware River watershed that is affecting our downtown, both aesthetically, recreationally, and economic development, because we can't get the data of what flows out of Berry Falls, what is being used here, and what comes our way. And if you look at our parks, the river is filling in. That is going to affect you over time. The limits on land for economic development and housing are huge. This area, I hope we'll all recognize, is not the same high growth rate as Eastern Massachusetts, but if we can't grow at all, our communities are going to die. Our next generations are not going to live here, they're going to live there, and they're going to draw on your water, which is our water. And they're going to leave, and that is going to create a demand. We need to work together to make a quality of life everywhere. And finally, I do want to talk about representation. We are blessed to have Jennifer on your board. I hope you realize that although sometimes she's much, she's a perfect much. And behind you is a room full of Jennifers representing the other part of the region. I'm sure we can find one or two that would add to your board and benefit us. Thank you for listening.
Wendell. When did that go? So before we move on with our agenda, I just want, I'm sorry, it might not be loud enough. Before we move on with the rest of our agenda, I did want to once again thank you all for coming. Hearing from you all today, it's always best to hear from the people who are actually living here and who know exactly the numbers, who have been really helpful. I think the whole board really appreciates the time that you took. It's very clear that everybody spent a lot of time thinking about what to say and said it very succinctly and very clearly. So really appreciate that. So we're gonna move on with the rest of the agenda, and you're free to, it's not that interesting. So if you would like to go, please don't feel like you have to sit. So we're going to move on to water policy and oversight.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, there is one proposed amendment to a design
So I'm sorry, we do need to be quiet so that we can finish the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, there is one proposed amendment to a design and engineering services during construction contract for the Quabbin Visitors Building. Madam Chair, I move to authorize the executive director on behalf of the authority to approve amendment 4 to contract 7677 Quabbin Visitors Building Design and Engineering Services during construction with the Robinson Green Barretta Corporation, increasing the contract amount by $246,000 from $1,643,443.41 to $1,889,443.41, and extending the contract term by 33 months from September 17, 2026 through June 17, 2029. Further, I move to authorize the executive director to approve additional amendments as may be needed to contract 7677 in an amount not to exceed the aggregate of $325,000 in 12 months in accordance with the management policies and procedures of the Board of Directors. Second. Pardon my Watertown accent.
Hi, I'm Patty Cullen, Senior Program Manager at MWRA. The Quabbin Visitors Building is being designed and built by MWRA for DCR to replace an existing facility here at the admin complex that is no longer meeting the needs of the current program. On the left is a rendering of the proposed building. It includes 3 oversized vehicle maintenance bays, 1 oversized wash bay, office space, a fire protection system, a potable water system, and associated utilities. The new location is shown on the map on the right. It's about a mile west of us, on the site of the existing storage building and fuel pump system. The design is now complete. It was advertised on our procurement portal on June 24th. Filed subbids are due July 29th. General bids due September 4th, and we expect to start construction in December with an 18-month construction schedule. So as you can see from the previous amendments, this was a challenging design. We had several unexpected obstacles, but we're moving forward again. However, we're up against the contract expiration date of September 17th. So to complete this work, staff are requesting a contract amendment number 4 for a 33-month time extension to cover the remaining bank services, an 18-month construction period, and a 12-month warranty period. And we're also asking for a $246,000 cost increase, most of which is escalation to bring the labor rates up to 2026 rates, as well as project administration for those extra 33 months, and some updates to required for the bid documents to reflect Massachusetts building code changes. This brings us to a new total design cost of just under $1.9 million.
What is the estimated construction cost?
$6.2 million.
Any more questions?
Any questions online? Okay.
Secretary Pepper?
Yes.
Chief Flanagan?
Flanagan, yes.
Mr. Bingham?
Yes.
Mr. Sweat? Mr. Sweat? Mr. Taverna?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Vitale, yes.
Mr. Patrick?
Yes.
And Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Thank you.
Kristen?
Yes.
The meeting notice, did we say 12:30 or noon? 12:30.
So let's move to administration and finance.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. There are 2 information items. The first is an update on climate mitigation trust project. The staff will provide a summary.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kristen Patno, Manager of Energy, and the only comment I'm going to make about Quabbin is that this is my first time here and it's beautiful. As you all know, Invitory is an environmental agency that's committed to sustainability, so it's important that we continue to accelerate our decarbonization efforts and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. You'll hear more about the greenhouse piece from my colleague Michael O'Keefe in a moment, but today I'm going to provide you an update on our decarbonization efforts that are being supported through the Climate Mitigation Trust. You can keep it on this slide. As previously reported, in October of 2024, the authority was awarded a $20 million award from DEP through the Climate Mitigation Trust. Funds from the trust are used for projects and programs that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and help mitigate the impacts of climate change. You can see here that the projects that Invitory proposed fall into two general categories: renewable energy and building electrification. On-site generation of renewables allows the authority to reduce our emissions by reducing our reliance on grid electricity, while any power that's exported to the grid helps the regional emissions. And since the building sector is second only to transportation in emissions in the Commonwealth, it's important that our focus shifts to electrifying our heating systems and replacing our fossil fuel systems. Next slide. Starting with renewables, wind. As previously reported, in May of 2023, one of the wind turbines at Deer Island suffered a catastrophic failure. You can see the photo of the damaged rotor assembly on the left being removed. There's limited opportunity for additional large-scale wind at MWR facilities, so the authority reviewed options for replacing this 600 kilowatt turbine. Testing was performed on the existing foundation anchors, and it confirmed that the foundation is structurally sound and can be reused, which means that we could replace the turbine without any new permitting requirements. Therefore, it was determined that an in-kind replacement for the Deer Island turbine would be the most cost-effective and time-efficient solution. At the December 2025 board meeting, contract 8148 was awarded to O'Connor Corporation for the procurement and installation of a completely refurbished nacelle, rotor assembly, and a new turbine and power cables. New tower and power cables. The total contract value is $3.82 million and a contract term of 420 days. Good news, we're ahead of schedule. Everyone likes to hear that. All major equipment submittals have been reviewed and approved. The turbine, tower, and nacelle are in the manufacturing process. You can see the nacelle and the equipment are in that assembly process right now in the photos on the right. And the equipment installation and testing is expected to occur by the end of this year. Next slide. Solar. Invitory executed a letter of intent with Select Energy through the Power Options solar program for the development of both canopy and roof-mounted systems at Deer Island. The initial canopy indicative design work started in 2025, and this included exploring and developing preliminary ideas and concepts, but also geotechnical and structural evaluations. One of the challenges we have with designing and installing a canopy on Deer Island in this parking lot is determining the location, depth, and composition of existing structures below the surface that were left in place from the original treatment plant. So in addition to existing borings and site plans from the construction project, the solar development team conducted ground penetrating radar. You can see a couple of shots of that on the left side. And then MWRA staff conducted a number of test pit excavations in the winter of this year. You can see a photo of one of the test pits, shows that really hard material, and then the soil logs that staff developed and were provided to the solar design engineers. All of this is critical to determine what the actual footprint and foundation design will look like for the canopy. Next slide. You can see here the preliminary proposed layout of the solar canopy. We expect that we can get 1.5 megawatt DC, which is just under 1 megawatt of AC. Currently, the executable proposal and design is being finalized, and subject to acceptable pricing terms and conditions, we really hope to be coming back to the board within the next couple of months for approval of the project. Staff also plan on developing roof on top of the residual odor control building at Deer Island, but that's going to happen after the roof on that building is replaced later this fiscal year. Next slide. and to show you some reference projects that were developed through the Power Options program by Select at other municipal entities. This Framingham State project, if you just more than double it, that'll represent the appropriate size of the Deer Island project. And they're really good looking structures, in my opinion. Next. The authority also executed a second letter of intent with Select in June of this year to assist staff with assessing the potential for a ground-mounted system on top of the Norumbega covered water storage tank. If you haven't been to this site, you can see from these photos and from the mock-up in the upper right photo, there's a lot of space for solar. The space alone could support 4 to maybe 5 megawatt of solar. However, the nearby distribution substations, Eversource, show a lot of congestion and capacity that is far below what the potential site can hold. We conducted a site visit last week with the Select team. They are now conducting a desktop analysis for the solar potential, and then the next step will be to submit an interconnection application with Eversource. Don't really have a timeline on that interconnection process, but we'll keep you updated. Shifting over now to building electrification, the next slide, please. As I noted, with the building sector being the second largest contributor of greenhouse gases, it's important for us to focus on electrifying our heating systems. And also the greening of the regional grid helps underline the importance of us doing this. Staff continue to work with our utility partners, National Grid and Eversource, in conducting heat pump specific audits of all of our facilities that utilize fossil fuel for heating. And then we implement these audit recommendations as we receive them. We recently completed 2 heat pump projects. You can see here are photos of those. The photo on the left is of our Norumbega headquarters building, and these photos are all of our Springs, and that's in Weston, and these are our Spring Street water pumping station in Arlington. Next slide. See here on this slide a list of numerous additional projects that are in various phases of progress. Although we are prioritizing facilities that utilize oil, we're also looking at supplementing facilities that utilize gas as well. And in addition, we're looking at any facility that has aging equipment that needs to be replaced. We'll prioritize those projects. As you can see, this equipment at the Chelsea Administration Building, which is badly in need of repair, and the design for that heat pump project is currently ongoing. Most of these projects that we are developing and moving forward with are air source heat pumps. Air source and water source heat pumps both move energy as opposed to creating it, which makes them highly efficient. And the core difference is their source of thermal energy. And air source heat pumps use ambient air for that thermal source, and water source heat pumps use a localized water source, whether it's a pond, an aquifer, and in our case, we're definitely interested in using wastewater as a source, a thermal source. Next slide. And this is just to recap with the project that I mentioned and give you an idea of the progress that we expect in this fiscal year. We expect completion of almost all of these projects with the exception of those that have notes in italics, but they will reach major milestones as well this fiscal year. And any questions?
Just a couple questions. The Chelsea building, if that's a leased building, we're leasing the building, and why is it the authority's responsibility?
We are responsible for the equipment.
The equipment. And just one comment, we have this problem with Newton, for your solar panel installations, please have the design incorporate drainage, some of the roof drainage, if you will, into the design. We made a couple of mistakes in Newton where they forgot to incorporate drainage, and when they installed these things, now the question is, what do we do with the stormwater that falls on the panel? Oh, we forgot. So it was a big change on us. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, and that's good, and I would love to have a follow-up conversation to
just
find out what your exact issues are, because we are talking with them about a gutter system, but with the option of we could modify it in the future if there are issues.
Yeah, what happened was they didn't install gutters, so they just let the water, the rainwater fall off the edge of the canopy onto the cars, ruining the asphalt and everything else. Some sort of gutter system.
In regards to was extraction of heat from wastewater. Where are we in that? Have we commissioned a study?
So we have a couple of things going on with that. One is internally we are working on a draft policy which would address any external inquiries of accessing MWRA's wastewater. We've had some conversations with entities who are interested in it. They heard about the DEP grant, and so, but we haven't actually had any formal proposals come our way. So we're trying to get ahead of it and develop a policy. But at the same time, what we want to do is actually pilot a system at one of our own facilities. And I should mention the policy, the way we're thinking about the policy development is that ideally we would partner with a public entity first, as opposed to a private entity, because there's all other additional challenges that come with private entities. So we're also looking at it internally for use. We've conducted a few preliminary audits of sites that might be good candidates, and it's based on what their heating load is and what if they have a consistent flow and a full flow in the pipe. So we've narrowed it down. There's 2 projects that are currently ongoing. One is the Clinton wastewater treatment plant. We're doing a full electrification assessment of that facility, including the use of biogas that we currently are using, but maybe we can optimize that and make it more efficient. And they're going to be looking at utilizing the wastewater effluent in a heat pump system. And that is being, that assessment right now is being funded through the Department of Energy's on-site technical assistance program. So right now there's no cost to the authority. We're also in partnership with National Grid on that, and they're going to bring in another technical consultant to support that study. And we're also going to be looking at one of our pumping stations in Weymouth and possibly submitting an application to the recently launched Mass DEP wastewater energy recovery program for a feasibility study. So we're at the feasibility stage right now.
Great. Any other questions?
Thank you so much. It was really exciting. Thank you.
All right, our second information item, a presentation on the MWRA's progress on emissions reduction in the 2024 greenhouse gas inventory is next. Staff will provide a summary.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael O'Keefe, Senior Program Manager for Planning. Today I'm going to briefly go through some of the highlights of our 2024 greenhouse gas inventory and our progress on emissions reductions. So MWRA has made significant progress in reducing greenhouse gases over the years in line with the Commonwealth's Clean Energy and Climate Plans, which set a state target of net zero emissions by 2050 with the interim target, which you can see here in the dashed line, of 33% by 2025 and 50% by 2030. And we've cut emissions, as you can see in the graph, by nearly 40% since 2006, which serves as our base year. You can see there's a little tick rise in emissions in 2024 compared to 2023. It's about a 7% increase, and that's attributed to factors that are beyond MWRA's control, led to an increase in fuel oil use at the boilers at Deer Island. And we're going to go into that a little later in the presentation. Next slide. So getting down into the details of the inventory, there's 5 main sources of greenhouse gases at MWRA. The first and by far the largest is electricity at 42%. Then there's natural gas, which we use for space heating as well as drying at the pellet plant, which is about 21.5%. Then there's process and fugitive emissions, which comes from biochemical reactions and unexpected emissions of methane, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide. It's just inherent in the wastewater treatment process. That is about 18%. And then we have diesel, fuel, oil, and propane, which we also use for space heating as well as for use of the emergency generators. 16%, and then lastly, a small percentage, only 2%, is from our vehicle fleet. So not only does electricity comprise our largest source of emissions, as you saw on the previous slide, but it's also the vast majority of our emissions reductions, about 80%. And this is a result of MWRA's commitment to energy efficiency projects and deploying renewable energy, as Krista mentioned a little while ago, but also really due to the greening of the electric grid. So we've had success in reducing our electricity use. We've reduced purchased electricity by about 9% since 2006, but that's translated to a much larger percent reduction in our electricity emissions, which is about 57%. That's pretty much the result of the Massachusetts grid becoming much less carbon intensive and reliant on fossil fuels. That's also reflected in our electricity emissions factor, which we use. electricity emissions factor, which we use to calculate emissions based on electricity. So this is a graph. The blue is the actual emissions factor over time. The red is projected out through 2050. And if the target set for renewable energy by the state comes to fruition, the average kilowatt hour will be about an eighth or so as carbon intensive in 2050 as it was in 2006. So this trend really emphasizes the importance of electrification. As the grid has more renewable energy, emissions will become less and less. So, as I mentioned before, emissions went up by about 7% in 2024 compared to 2023, and that was largely due to factors outside of our control. It's important to remember that indoors emissions are largely dependent on weather, so when there's more rain, there's more intense precipitation, there's more water we have to pump, that requires more energy, that requires more emissions. Similarly, when it's a really cold winter, we use more energy to heat our facilities, and that's what's happened in 2024. Emissions from fuel oil combustion at Deer Island's boilers increased by 150% in 2024 compared to 2023, and that drove the overall increase in fuel oil emissions by 51% and contributed to about 80% of that uptick in 2024. So in addition to the colder winter, initial analysis by Invitory staff suggests that this might be influenced by the recent decrease in solids and nutrient loading in the wastewater coming into Deer Island. So this could reduce the quantity of the beneficial digester gas produced per unit of wastewater, meaning we have to use more fuel oil to meet the plant's heating demand. So simply put, combusting the gas we're producing is generating less heat per unit, so we have to use fuel oil to supplement that. So staff is continuing to evaluate the cause of this and whether it's going to be a long-term trend that we have to be concerned about, but it could be the result of historically low wastewater flows coming into Deer Island as a result of the drought. So that means longer detention times and solid degradation in the collection system. So the waste is breaking down before it has a chance to get to Deer Island and we can capture that energy. Also,
Is there a way for you to monitor that now in real time or no?
So we do monitor that. Yeah, and I do have a table here just comparing, I think it was an average of FY17 to FY19 compared to the past 2 years. Certain indicators of the level of organics coming into Deer Island have decreased by about 30%. So that's total suspended solids, biochemical, oxygen demand, and a few factors like that just decreased by a third.
And fuel oil is the only option for the backup?
Yeah, just to maintain that heating demand at Deer Island.
You may recall that we are working on changes to our combined power plant, which will be more efficient use of the methane, which will, when given an amount of methane, heat by less fuel oil, and the work that seems to be on battery storage and what the mail may reduce or is expected to reduce the amount of fuel oil we need for emergency power when we work in parallel to the grid, so that if the grid goes off, so everyone doesn't go. So we do have some ways to look at that, but in the meantime, this is unfortunate.
And that's on the next slide. So yeah, lastly,
sorry about that.
Yeah, lastly, I just want to stress that Invitory continues to advance projects that reduce greenhouse gases, and we have concrete plans to build on our achievements. As Kristen mentioned, we're progressing on all the climate mitigation trust projects. And as you know, we're also progressing on a new combined heat and power system at Deer Island, commenced design in October of 24. And once completed, this new system will produce about double the renewable energy that the current system produces. And that means when it's complete, about 75% of all the energy that Deer Island uses will be produced on site. And also, as Steve mentioned, there'll be about a 75% reduction in the fuel oil used compared to now at Deer Island. And then lastly, we're also planning to install a large-scale battery at Deer Island that could reduce our use of combustion turbine generators, as Steve mentioned, during the storms, and that'll also have a significant impact on our emissions reductions. So that's a brief overview, but happy to answer any questions.
Some questions? Sure. Going over my along.
No.
Two quick questions. One on figure one, just want to understand the mechanics. So these
on the first slide?
On the first slide, right. So are these numbers normalized for input output, or are they irrespective of subscription? So for instance, if we're producing more water in the future, Are these numbers normalized for that? Is it per?
These are just our
million
pure
gallons?
emissions. Our emissions.
So if we had increased demand, that would sort of work against us in our goals?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, water only contributes about 10% of our overall emissions. It's really heavy on wastewater.
On the wastewater side,
Yeah.
So if we have increased flows to Deer Island, that would work against us. Against meeting the
Yeah, I mean,
goals.
more flows, yeah, I mean, more energy to pump everything.
I just didn't know if it was
Yeah.
normalized per MWC.
No. It's our pure, it doesn't take that into consideration a year-by-year variation.
In the actual report, there's a chart that does normalize by flow.
I see. Okay.
You get some numbers on per gallon
Yeah.
estimates.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
It just means that we have to move
Good.
quicker than.
You went right to the heart of the conversation we've had internally.
Yeah. All right, and then my second question. I know a number of years ago we had evaluated potential food waste to energy project, and the economics were not favorable at the time. Is that something that we've looked at again? Is that the economics change on something like that?
I mean, I can speak very briefly to that. So we.
No, it's a perfectly acceptable answer.
No, we have had some more recent conversations, but no, I mean, there are some challenges that we have trucking food waste to Deer Island that may be unsurmountable. So we've been kind of talking around the edges again, but no serious conversations on that issue.
Thank you.
Any questions? Great, thank you. Yeah, is that, do we have any other business? I'll just give a super quick report on the executive director's status. We had a meeting this week, and that meeting was to start going through the resumes that we have. But really no choice, it was just a preliminary meeting going through resumes. Okay.
How many?
I don't know how many have total been submitted, but the ones that we looked at, I think was, I think we looked about 25.
That's great.
I think the plan is to do a preliminary interview with and then call people back for in-person. Okay, anything else? No further business, and motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Secretary Pepper?
Yes.
Chief Flanagan?
Wayne, yes.
Mr. Pena?
Yes.
Mr. Sweat? Mr. Sweat? Mr. Vitale?
Vitale, yes.
Patrick Wall?
Yes.
And Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
And I'm yes.
Oh, Mr. Clerk.
You're so quiet.